Leaders of the Christian conservative movement have apparently decided their best hope in the 2012 presidential contest will come from a candidate who has not yet declared he's even running. Time magazine is reporting today Texas Governor Rick Perry is the new darling of right-wing religious icons. Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council, David Barton, whose warped reading of U.S. history through religion has been documented on this program, and John Hagee, the pastor so controversial John McCain turned down his endorsement in 2008. Time reports that those three men think Perry has a better chance of the nomination than Rick Santorum, brings the religious fervor that Tim Pawlenty and Mitt Romney lack, and for reasons not quite clear, they seem to be ignoring Michelle Bachmann's momentum. Perhaps Perry's religious mega rally set for next month has something to do with it.
I sincerely hope you'll join me in Houston on August the 6th and take your place in Reliant Stadium with praying people, asking God's forgiveness.
But Perry is no slam dunk candidate for Republicans to rally around, because while Perry brags about his state's new budget, the nonpartisan Texas Legislative Study Group says Perry used accounting tricks to hide an $18.3 billion deficit, one that will hit schools and Medicaid recipients the hardest. In order to close the massive shortfall without any new taxes, Perry resorted to some serious Enron-style accounting. For instance, the state delayed a $2.3 billion payment to schools by 1 day, pushing the payment into the 2014 budget and off the books for the current one. The budget also predicts a flat increase in the number of school children in the state, even though Texas is one of the fastest growing states in the country. And even more audacious, the legislators instructed the state's accountants to increase their projection of future property value increases so as to predict a full $800 million in more property tax revenue. And that's just on the one budget. As for Perry's so-called conservative social stance, let me bring in someone who's quite familiar with that. Joining me now is Terry Hall of the group Texans Uniting for Freedom and Reform and Freedom. Terry, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks, Chris. It's good to be here.
Terry, you and I have spoken before a number of times, and you describe yourself as a pro-life Christian conservative. And based on what we've been reading today and what's been reported, I would think that you would be squarely in the demographic that would be cheering on a Rick Perry presidential run. But why is that not the case?
Oh, I absolutely am in that demographic. As a homeschool mom of 8 kids, a social conservative, Christian conservative, I should be in his demographic and should be very much in support of Rick Perry as a candidate for president. But we are absolutely not. And there's a whole lot of members in our ranks that aren't for the same reasons. This guy wants to toll and tax every single existing highway in the state of Texas. There's over 400 toll projects on existing roads that are being contemplated around our state right now. He wants to sell off our infrastructure to foreign companies, which is a huge property rights boondoggle for our state. And so that's just the few things that have gotten us stirred up around our state. And we just feel like the more we push back on this governor, the more he throws it back in our faces. In fact, that budget you were just talking about, well, the legislative session that just ended on May 30th, I believe it was, actually has 15 Texas roads that are going to be sold off to these foreign companies. And it's going to cost Texans 75 cents a mile to use those lanes that are owned by foreign companies. And these are sweetheart deals. And there's a lot of people who have contributed to his campaign. When you're governor of a state of Texas this big for 10 years, you have a lot of campaign contributors to pay off. And he's done a whole lot for corporate America, but not very much for small business owners and for your average taxpayer here in Texas. We pay some of the highest property taxes. We pay some of the highest homeowners insurance rates. He passed the largest tax on businesses, the business margins tax. Some of the small businesses experienced a 400% increase in a single year. So this is not a conservative. He may be a social conservative, but he's not a fiscal conservative. And I think if we're going to have a presidential candidate that is a true conservative, you have to have both, not just social, but on fiscal issues as well.
Terry, one of the things I thought was interesting, you started in activism fighting this massive road privatization project called the Trans-Texas Corridor. That's how you and I first met. And when we were speaking, you and I, down in outside San Antonio a few years back, you talked about this sort of this kind of cronyist streak to Rick Perry that you felt was really what was sort of uniting the opposition to him. How has he run the state of Texas? In whose best interest has the state of Texas been run while Perry is governor?
Well, I think it's fair to say that Rick Perry is truly a special interest governor. That's who he's serving. It's not we the people of Texas. And you can trace it. Look at the HPV vaccine. A lot of people outside Texas even know about this, that he passed an executive order that was going to mandate an HPV vaccine for sexually transmitted disease for all 6th grade girls in Texas. And he did it for $6,000 campaign check from the drug company Merck. That same lobbyist, Mike Toomey, was the same lobbyist that used to work for Sintra, that turned around, worked for Rick Perry at one time, and then got the Trans-Texas Corridor development rights granted to his former employer, Sintra, the Spanish company, and then went back to work for Sintra. I mean, the revolving door is clear on a whole bunch of issues, not just on the Trans-Texas Corridor. That just happens to be the one that started our grassroots group. But he's definitely serving special interests. I mean, he's got more corporate welfare slush funds than I can even count. Your Emerging Technology Fund, the Texas Enterprise Fund, the Film and TV Commission Fund. I mean, we have all kinds of money to increase Perry's corporate slush funds, but not enough money to fund government, as you were talking about in your opening. Our budget was balanced on accounting tricks. Last biennium's budget, last 2-year budget, was balanced on stimulus money. So what does that tell you?
Terry Hall of the groups Texans United for Reform and Freedom, thanks so much for being my guest tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.